Lord Christopher Monckton, the third Viscount of Monckton and Brenchley, worked as press officer for the Conservative Central Office. Was also one of the chief advisors to Margaret Thatcher. Has written and been managing editor for the Sunday Telegraph magazine. The list just goes on and on. He's also an inventor. And he has really been the chief main focal point. If you had to say there was a general out there fighting the eugenicist, fighting the control freaks that want to set up a carbon tyranny, it's Lord Christopher Monckton. And so much has happened in the last few months. They've admitted ClimateGate was real now. They've admitted the IPCC report was a complete fraud. Their own authors have come out and said that. They've admitted that the Earth is actually cooling. That they, I mean, word for word, everything Monckton has documented at his website, all the research papers he's written, he's been vindicated completely in spades. I mean, he couldn't be more vindicated. But meanwhile, they're not backing off. They're saying, we're going to change the nomenclature. We're going to launch massive geoengineering to save you from global warming. They're saying that they do want to arrest people that are climate deniers. They are running TV ads with children saying, I'm putting you on notice. You're my parents. You know, we're taking the gloves off. Al Gore's giving more speeches to children, saying, tell your parents what to do. The public schools everywhere in this country, and I know in England, are still brainwashing the children, saying we're all dead. It doesn't matter if islands all over the Pacific are actually getting bigger and many sea level readings are going down. They don't care. They don't care. They're going forward with all of this. And now I have the headline, Obama's science advisor says, don't call it global warming, call it our deteriorating climate, our deteriorating atmosphere. And we need to stabilize the climate, meaning if there's ever any type of cold temperatures, hot temperatures, that's abnormal. The Earth should be basically 76 degrees year-round. And they're also moving into saying that all the animals are becoming extinct. So that'll be their new way to steal people's property. So we've basically routed them intellectually, but they're dug in, and they're not stopping. And I turn the radio on, all I hear is, buy our car, it's green. Buy this house, it's green. Germany's passing laws that by 2020, all single-dwelling homes will be illegal. You've got to live in dormitories with others. I mean, they're not stopping. And so Lord Christopher Monckton is our guest. Lord Monckton, good to have you on.
Well, Alex, it's great to be with you once again, and what a formidable list you've just given of the antics of the global warming extremists worldwide. They are yet again trying to cause trouble by maintaining or flogging this dead horse, trying to maintain the scare, which now everybody knows is no longer real. There's been no significant global warming for the last decade. Now, even the University of East Anglia, where I'm going to visit in a couple of months' time, is admitting that. They've now said, yeah, we actually haven't had the warming we expected to see. Well, no, they haven't, because CO2 is only a bit part player in the climate. I've just come back from a very interesting conference at Erice in Sicily of the World Federation of Scientists. These are 250 of the world's top scientists looking into planetary emergencies. They have an annual session once a year on a mountaintop overlooking the ocean. And there I was with these scientists, and I gave them a presentation showing my own calculations, which indicated that we don't have a problem with the climate. Yes, we can generally expect it maybe to get a little warmer, but not enough to worry about. And what was interesting was that 3 other scientists there gave similar presentations coming from completely different directions, and all concluding that if we double the CO2 in the atmosphere, maybe we'll see 1 Celsius degree or 2 Fahrenheit degrees of warming this century. That is all. Is that to worry about? No, of course it isn't. And you mentioned geoengineering. Well, what is the point of doing geoengineering unless you know which direction to geoengineer in? You have to get the science right before you start messing about with the planet in that way. And you may remember that 30 years ago, when everybody was talking about global cooling, and we were told by the usual suspects, the same usual suspects that are now telling us about global warming, that global cooling was the big problem, they were proposing to put carbon dust, soot, all over Siberia and all over the Arctic and Greenland so as to darken the ground and allow more sunlight to come in, melt a bit more ice, and keep us a bit warmer. And thank goodness they didn't do that, because now they're saying, well, what we need to do is the opposite. Geoengineering, we need to have great silver umbrellas up in space. We need to be seeding the atmosphere with particles that will reflect the light, such as sulfur dioxide, which until recently they've been taking out of the atmosphere. And so round and around it goes, with scientific institutions and universities and politicians getting enormous grants from taxpayers, whether the taxpayers like it or not, to fund ever more absurd projects, and all as the science behind the scare terminally collapses.
Well, Lord Monckton, that was my next point, is Bill Gates has patented literally dozens of these. He's seeking funds for anti-hurricane machines, for global aluminum dioxide, barium spraying campaigns. They admit they've been testing this for decades, and one fellow back in the early 90s won a Nobel Prize for it. But as you said, they have no idea, because of the complex weather interactions, of whether it's going to heat up or cool off. As you know, the UN last year at Copenhagen had a declaration that the sun doesn't affect climate, because they have to deny that so they can then play God here. But I mean, isn't this also just a giant boondoggle where they demand billions of dollars to save us by controlling our climate, when they admit they might be able to manipulate it from time to time, but overall they have no idea what they're doing in the aggregate?
They haven't got a clue what they're doing. We've known since 1963 that trying to predict what the climate's going to do next for more than a few weeks out is impossible by any method. It's mathematically proven that you can't do it. And yet here are these nincompoops trying to tell us that they can tell us exactly what's going to happen to the climate if we do what we're doing at the moment, which is getting on with our lives and burning fossil fuels and generating CO2. And then they say, but of course, if they do what they would like us to pay for, then it's all going to change and they can predict this. Well, no, they can't. It's been long established that they can't make that kind of prediction.
But Lord Monckton, let's cut to the chase on that one issue of carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
I mean, they've done studies where they can tell crowds the scientific name of water, dihydrogen monoxide, and over 90% will sign a form, including educated people, saying ban water, it's a toxic waste. The same thing with the scientific name for table salt. Most people will sign a form saying ban it if they're given the scientific name. People confuse carbon dioxide with a dangerous gas, carbon monoxide, but from the basic confirmed research that I've seen from the mud flats and the ice caps and the studies, carbon dioxide has been as much as 14 times higher than it is now, and all of the controlled studies they've done show that plants grow better, live longer, higher crop yields, that then animals put off more carbon dioxide for the plants, they give us more oxygen, and that the Earth is really in this geological and climatic phase in an oxygen and carbon dioxide starved state, and that carbon dioxide is actually good for life.
That is completely correct in all respects. In fact, if you go back to the Jurassic era, 175 million years ago, you're too young, Alex, but those of us who were around at the time remember it well. And at that time, there was, as you say, 14, 15, 16 times as much CO2 in the atmosphere as there is today, and yet here we all are. Go back a little further to the Cambrian era, 550 million years ago, and at that time, there was 20 times as much carbon dioxide as there is today. Go back another couple of 100 million years to the Neo-Proterozoic era in the early Precambrian. And at that time, get this, there was 773 times as much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere as there is today. About a third of the atmosphere at that time was carbon dioxide, and yet here we all are. The oceans did not acidify and melt all the creatures. All of this bedwetting about how the world is going to come to an end because we have changed over the last 260 years the atmospheric composition by 0.01%. And that's the entire change that we've made by adding carbon dioxide to it. We've added the equivalent of 0.01% of the atmosphere in the form of carbon dioxide. This is simply not enough to cause a major change in the Earth's temperature. And the big question in climate science is how much of a change can this very, very small increase in carbon dioxide concentration actually cause. And all the researchers, like those ones at the conference in Eritrea of the World Federation of Scientists, who do this by measurement and observation, conclude that if you double the CO2 concentration, then you get an increase in temperature of around 2 Fahrenheit.